Hello, everyone. I just wanted to start, before I give my formal remarks, acknowledging the loss that we as an NDP family are feeling right now with the loss of Dan Coulter. I wanted to send my condolences to his family. He was a good friend, and we will all feel that loss for a long time. A few weeks ago, we embarked on a journey of sitting down with the BC Green Party. And it was a journey that really was enriching to all of us. And I wanted to start this by acknowledging and all the people that came to the table with us. It was Sonia, Rob, Adam, and Jeremy and their team that sat down with us for the last few weeks. And it was a really great time to speak across differences and understand both of our perspectives and how our commitment is shared when it comes to delivering for British Columbians. I'm really pleased to announce that through that really profound work, we've reached an agreement. And I believe it's an agreement that finds shared values amongst our parties and is focused on improving the lives of British Columbians, whether it's through healthcare, building good housing, creating livable communities, and growing a strong, sustainable economy. I know that we're both distinct parties with distinct values, but in a time that we're in today, it's great to find a space where we can speak across differences and lay out initiatives that we know will make British Columbians' lives better. And it's important that we do that work to build bridges. And I'm really grateful for BC Green Party and all the people at the table that got us to today. And I really look forward to the work in the future. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Minister. We're going to start in the room today. Just a reminder for reporters on the phone to press *1 to enter the queue. That's *1 to ask a question. For media in the room, please line up at the microphone provided, and please make sure to provide your full name and outlet. We'll start in the room. Please go ahead.
Hello, it's Ben Milger with CTV News. Attorney General, I understand you played a key role in the negotiation of this, and that's part of the reason that you're here today to make this announcement. But respectfully, David Eby is the leader of your party and the Premier of this province. Why is the Premier not here to answer questions about this important agreement?
My role now does include also Deputy Premier, and the Premier has been very much involved in this process. And I'm happy to answer questions specifically about the work that we did and how we arrived at that agreement. And it's really been a team effort.
There is a section in your agreement about possible electoral reform, looking at proportional representation. Over the years, voters have rejected that time and time again. Why is that something that you're going to be investing money and time in yet again?
We have different perspectives as parties on where we're at with proportional representation, but what we focused on in this agreement in these discussions is find areas where we could come together through key initiatives despite those differences. So although we may take a different position than the Green Party about the role and the future of proportional representation of the work into it, what we agreed to do was to establish an all-party standing committee to focus on very key things about the electoral process. And some of those I think are very important about how we run elections and voter turnout and how we engage people in the voter process. And I expect they have their views on proportional representation. But that was what this agreement is about. It's keeping our individual identities as distinct political parties, but finding a way to work together.
For our next question, we're staying in the room. Please go ahead.
Bonjour, Jennifer Maya from Radio Canada. Can you tell me with this agreement what distinguishes the NPD from the Green Party from now on?
Yeah, so this really was agreement about key initiatives where we were focused on delivering together. It also very clearly states that we maintain our differences and our ability in the Green Party. I know this was very important to them to be able to disagree or differ from government positions when that happens. But British Columbians expect us to work together. These are challenging times in lots of ways, and we, as the Premier said, we don't have all the best ideas out there. We have a lot of really good ideas, and the Green Party has some good ideas. And what this does is find places where we are together working on those ideas for the betterment of British Columbians. And I think there's something really powerful in that. I'm really proud of the work of the things that we landed on, and I respect the role of the BC Green Party as an opposition party to continue to express differences as we move forward in our 4 years.
And in the negotiation of this agreement, can you tell me which are some issues that are not included that created maybe a divide or that both parties really did not agree on?
Yeah, I would say the way the negotiations unfolded, and at least from my perspective, it was really about us focused on where the agreements were. We both just came off of a campaign where we had platforms where we pitched our ideas to the public. And we worked through some of the commonalities that we found, and also where the Green Party had ideas that they were championing that we looked at, and we thought, this could have really positive outcomes for British Columbians. So it really was about building bridges rather than finding issues to differ about. And there aren't that many spaces in the world for that right now where we do that. So I'm really grateful that we had that space. And I know that we'll have differences of opinions moving forward, but the fact that we can show a pathway where two political parties in a time of great polarization can come together for British Columbians, I think is a profound thing.
I was going to do a final check for any other questions in the room. Please go ahead.
Mike Hager, Globe and Mail. Thanks for taking questions. Can you just maybe speak to how much of an impediment the history of the previous agreement and any trepidation? How did you overcome the concerns of the Greens that they would get the short end of an agreement again?
Yeah, we had a lot of really, I think, frank discussions about what we both felt went right during CASA and what was a lesson from that relationship. And so what we struck here was a balance where we focused on key initiatives and key priorities that are deliverables, and a way to keep government stable for 4 years without thinking that, without it erasing the distinct identity that we both have as political parties and the fact that there's spaces to differ. So I would say all of the things in this agreement is as a result of lessons from how we've worked together in the past. And I think it's a great thing to think about a way that we can work together in the future from those lessons.
And the Greens were harsh critics of expanding involuntary care, which, of course, your party and the Conservatives promised to do. So a key element, it looks like, is expanding public coverage of psychologists. So is this going to occur at the same time as maybe slowing involuntary care and ramping that up, or do you see them complementing each other?
I think, again, when we sat at the table, we were finding areas of agreement, and we were focused on those areas of agreement. And clearly, mental health is a key issue that we need to address, and British Columbians expect us to address. And so where we found that agreement was through finding a pathway, which was a Green proposal of psychologists funded in the health system, and expanding that free access. And I think that's a great thing for British Columbians. Again, we will have different opinions about many topics, and you raised one, but this agreement wasn't about that. It was about where we can work together. So the government has expressed its opinion in the work that we're doing on other things, and this is about the key initiatives that we could come together on.
We're going to go to the phones next. Our first question on the phones is Richard Zussman, Global News. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for taking my question. Two things in the agreement that stands out to me. One on the healthcare community health centers. Is this in replace of primary urgent care centers or on top of? Will we be seeing urgent primary care centers close in order to open community health centers, or delay the opening of those primary urgent care centers and have community health centers instead? And on the issue of forests, with tariffs looming in January from the United States, what uncertainty may you create here for the forestry sector by undertaking a review of BC forests at the same time that there's tremendous fear about the impact of ongoing tariffs?
Yeah, and to your first question, primary care and the idea that we need to make sure the British Columbians across the province have the primary care they need is really what both parties were focused on. One of the ideas that the BC Greens brought forward was the role of community health centres in delivering that type of service. There are community health centres out there now that are funded by the government, and some that are about just doctors coming together to form community health centres. So what we agreed to do was to look at how we support the growth of community health centres, not in necessarily by erasing the urgent primary care centres, because we know that they have a role, especially in certain areas, and a specific role when it comes to reducing emergency room wait times. And so it was about working together to expand community health centres, but also we have targets for urgent primary care centres. And part of that is a review that we would be conducting with Dr. Penny Ballum that would look at the primary care delivery models and what's the best one. So it's work that will unfold together in the future. And I think what was clear in the discussions, we're both focused on making sure that across British Columbia, British Columbians have the primary health care that they need. And what models come from grassroots that could be supported through that. I think we were open to figuring out how we fund and support.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just if you could touch on the forestry issue as well. But I also need to ask about building vessels. BC Ferries announcing next steps today. I know the Greens have relied often on coastal communities. There doesn't seem to be anything in here around a conversation around supporting ferries. But an argument has been made in the past that we should be building more ferries in BC. Is that something we consider? I know it's more expensive, but we also build roads now and bridges that are more expensive due to community benefit agreements. So should we be thinking about the economic incentives of building our own vessels like ferries here in BC? And the forest piece as well, please.
Yeah, thanks. So I owe you an answer to the other question. There was a real recognition, I think, through our discussions and certainly our government, that the forest industry is an important part of the province and also is going through very challenging times. The discussions that we had at the table and the agreement we went to is about supporting the community-led initiatives that also support the industry. And I know the Greens have a perspective on that, and so do we. And I just want to let everybody out there in the forestry industry know that we understand the concerns and the challenges that they're facing right now, and it's our commitment to work through those challenges to get through to a better place. So the question about the ferry. So I just heard actually before the press conference here about that initiative and that proposal from BC Ferries. And as a government, we're always open to supporting great economic ideas or things that might encourage jobs here in BC. And I know that Minister Farnworth would probably have something to say very clearly in response to that proposal. So I'll leave it to him to do that.
Our next question is for Alec Lazenby, Vancouver Sun. Please go ahead.
Hi, Minister and Deputy Premier. Just wondering, obviously, high-profile agreement with the Greens in 2017 and the confidence in supply. This isn't quite a confidence in supply agreement. It's a little bit less than, but supposedly the Greens will still support you on all confidence votes. How does this differ from the past agreement? And, how do you plan to operate maybe in areas where the Greens don't support some of the legislation or priorities put forward by the government?
Yeah, so I see the key parts of this agreement as cooperation and working together on key initiatives for the British Columbians. That's really what we sat down at the table to focus on. And so what you have in here are certain areas of key initiatives where we want to see jointly outcomes on together. So we know that they're rolling out that to the benefit of British Columbians, and the stability of government through an agreed upon process, particularly for confidence votes, and a process related to how we work together to understanding legislation, and also with the respect of the idea that as separate political identities, we will have differences on issues that come up over the next 4 years, but we'll find a process to work together on that. I think one thing that we're really committed to jointly as political parties is making sure that the government functions on behalf of British Columbians, that we can deliver the things that British Columbians sent us to Victoria to do, and that's a key part of what we're going to be working together on in the next 4 years.
Alec, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. In terms of a follow-up, you mentioned who was who was on the side of the Greens in terms of the negotiation process, but I didn't hear you mention who was on the side of the NDP, who was around the table. Obviously, I believe you were around the table, but can you give an idea of sort of the team that you were working with during this agreement and negotiations?
Sure. Yeah, we had a good team around the table. We had Mike McGee with us, Matt Smith, and myself, and the Premier, when available, also joined the discussions.
Our next question is Brenna Owen, Canadian Press. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So you've described this agreement as a way to keep government stable, and I just wanted to ask, how concerned were you about the stability of government, that it was so important to seek out this agreement with the Greens?
I think we approached these discussions as a way to ensure that we were delivering for British Columbians and that we were working to build bridges across parties. The Premier's been clear in this mandate that we are open to working with people across different aisles and with different perspectives and different ideas. And this was a way to formalize that with the Green Party. I have to say, sitting across the table with members of the Green Party, there's a lot of shared values there about how we see lives of British Columbians and supporting lives of British Columbians in the province. And so we were able to find a lot of common ground on how we wanted to work together. It's important that we are focused on delivering for British Columbians, but also a stable government, which is what people need and expect. And I think cooperation is a key part of that. It shows a pathway that in a very polarizing times for two parties to come together despite any differences and work together for common goals. And I think that was the important work that we set out to do. It provides us that pathway for the next 4 years.
Brenna, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, so just given some of John Restad's comments and some of the sticking points between the NDP and the Greens, how confident are you that this government will last 4 years?
I'm confident in the work that we're going to do in the next 4 years and the work that we will do through this agreement and that we will deliver for British Columbians. We were sent here and voted by British Columbians to do the job, to make their lives better and to address the challenges that they are facing and all the opportunities that we have for economic development and making this a strong province with the strong economy that it's had. And that's what we're focused on, and we need to stay focused on that. And I think this agreement is an example of the work that we're putting in to get there.
Next question, Wolf Deppner, Black Press. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my question. I did a brief scan through the document, and by my calculations, it commits itself to $245 million in spending. Can you comment on that?
So some of the items on here will be work that will get costed out in the future because the exact extent of the budget item is not worked out yet. We'll have to do that as we embark on the work. We were very clear, and it's actually noted very clearly in the agreement, which was very important to the process of getting there, the amounts that would be allocated and sometimes out of existing funding. So we were very careful to make sure that we were fiscally responsible in managing any commitments under this agreement, or potentially using what we can have as existing pockets or budgets of money that are delivering things right now and just adjusting them in the light of the ideas that we came up with at the table or that the Greens presented. So although I don't have a full costing on there where we do it, it's actually noted in the agreement.
Just to acknowledge, so this agreement is going to cost more than $245 million. Then I also note that there is a very specific agreement regarding the sea to sky corridor. Is this a case of essentially buying off the MLA for that riding?
The work on Sea to Sky has been ongoing. We've initiated that previously. I think it's one of the corridors, along with the other ones listed there, that have been really challenging for British Columbians. And when British Columbians say they want regional transit and better connection, that's an area of high volume that it's in need of that immediately. So we certainly prioritized based on work that was happening in the past and things that have been noted as higher need.
We have time for one more question. Our final question today goes to Shannon Waters, the Narwhal. Please go ahead.
Hi there. I note that the agreement includes permanent protections for the Fairy Creek watershed pending the resolution of existing legal proceedings and community negotiations and in partnership with the Dididat and Pachidat. I'm wondering if you have an idea of what that timeline might look like and whether the nations are aware of this commitment at this point in time.
Yeah, so the wording of that really captures the steps that would need to be taken before that happens. So obviously there's court proceedings that are involved in this that are out of our hands. So that timeline would not be something I could tell you what it would be right now. And our commitment through UNDRIP, with I know is shared with the Green Party, is that we would work with the local First Nations in getting there. My understanding is that conversations about that area have been ongoing with the government, and certainly with this commitment, they would have to continue, and we would have that. That's written in the agreement.
Shannon, do you have a follow-up?
I do. I just wanted to try and get really clear on whether the nations have been notified that this is part of the agreement and whether there is a possibility, given the uncertainty around, the mentioned legal proceedings, that this might not actually be something that is realized due to those considerations.
Yeah, so we had really frank conversations about this item, about the things that are in our hands and that are not. And that's why expressly it mentions subject to conversations with the Pachidat and the Dididat in the agreement, because we know that that's an important step, and it's been our commitment as a government to always have that as an important step along the way. And that was clear in our discussions, and that's why it's in that agreement. I think the commitment is to work towards getting there with permanent protection of the Fairy Creek watershed. We've been doing work already to protect areas and defer logging in specific areas, and the commitment is to take the steps to get there, which of course includes the local nations and making sure they're included in those processes as they have been in the past going forward.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone.